So good evening, everyone. I'm going to quickly switch my camera on. I am talking all the way from Cape Town. So there I am on your screen. Hello, everyone. I hope that you've had a good weekend and that you're ready for a fairly short week since it is Easter next weekend. So just an official hello so you can see me. I'm now going to turn off my camera for the sake of bandwidth so that our video will be less heavy, if you want to call it that. So welcome, everyone. I'm glad to see that quite a few of you are in the session. I think we have got quite a few students that are currently very anxiously preparing for tomorrow's submission. Yes, Jennifer, I'm terribly sorry about that. I lecture during on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at Rosebank College in Cape Town, and Rosebank's PAS is different from Varsity College PAS. So they actually have the due date as today. And as I talk to those students a lot more than I talk to you, in my brain, it was just, okay, due date 3 April. So I'm terribly sorry if I gave you all a heart attack. It was not at all the intention, but I am glad that at least you now have a day or two, well, not a day or two, you've got a 24 hours in a Biki Bay to catch up on whatever it is that you needed to do. So
no worries,
today,
Joe. It keeps us young. And rather that it was today and we have tomorrow instead of the other way around.
yes, yeah, no, that's a definite. So today's session, I'm not going to discuss assignment 1 unless someone wants me to talk about something specific. So in the email, I said to you guys that if anyone has questions on assignment 1, we can deal with it until 1:15. So that gives us about another 12 minutes. So Edna, I see that you've raised your hand. You're welcome to talk.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to ask about assignment 1, but I know you showed us how to do the reference listing when we adjust the reference at the end of the assignment. I'm still struggling how to align the reference list. That's all. I'm done with the
Sorry,
assignment.
you're struggling to align what?
The reference listing. Remember you showed us how to align it? The reference list.
How to hang it?
Yes.
Okay, so let me first quickly see if I can get, I should have my master's thesis because I spoke to my professor now the other day. So I'm going to just play around with that and see if that will help you.
Because I remember you told us to do it from A to Z, which is, I think, is the ascending and the descending.
Yes.
Okay. It only shows the names on, or the surname on the left, yeah.
Okay, so I have got now, let me just go to my reference list. These things take forever to get through. Oh, no, I don't have a reference list yet. Okay, just hang on. Let me find one for us. Let me grab one of my research modules. Students' work from there. Sorry, it takes a little bit of time. I didn't know that you guys are going to want to do that. So let's just get a Word document. Okay, so let's see how the student did hers. Okay, so what you want me to show you how to do it alphabetically, and you want me to show you how to hang the ones. Okay, so let me show you how to do it. So for that, I'm going to have to do a screen share. Yes, you are right. Sometimes it automatically does hang it for you. Let's say share screen, entire screen. Okay, so here is another student's work. So hers is already alphabetical. So if I had to highlight it, obviously it's now a couple of years ago that this was done, but just to show you, you would be able to now go on that little thing that says there, sort. And if I click on it, it will say per paragraph, and I want to go ascending. If I go descending, it's going to go the upper side, other way. No.
I'm not sure if I'm the only one. I can't see the screen. Sorry.
Can nobody else see the screen?
No, we can see the screen.
See the screen. You might need to click on the, whoever spoke, you might need to click on the bottom right-hand side. You'll see a picture of, we see a picture of Joe, and then the screen, you'll probably see Joe on screen, and then a little picture on the bottom right-hand side. Click on that little picture there by the text box.
Okay, so it's not going to allow me to do it, but you would basically highlight your text. You would go onto the sort A to Z, and you would go, guys, just help me. My brain is no pop. Is it ascending or descending? Descending, I would imagine. Ascending. A, B, C, D, E. I think it's ascending. I can't see if anybody types because I'm doing a screen share. So that is where you would do that. If you want to do the hanging of the paragraphs, you would also highlight it under paragraph. You will click that little arrow thingy. Then you will go special and you will click on hanging, and it will then hang it for you. So that's how you would go about doing it. So just in case you were wondering how to go about doing that, you now have got an idea. So I have stopped sharing my screen and I've stopped sharing a live video. Okay, I hope everybody else has got that. It would be recorded on the video, and I'll do my best to upload that video for you as soon as I can this evening. Okay, so any other questions with regards to assignment 1 that students are still unaware of what they are supposed to do? I've had some, if I can just think back of the last few days, do we need to use headings? Definitely you have to. You guys are now no longer at school. You're not with an undergraduate. In postgraduate studies, you need, in academic writing, make use of headings. That's very important. So the headings was the one thing. You've got to indicate your word count. So Hannah says, I'm still unsure about question 2.2. Okay, I've recently been developing another module's exams. So can you please just refresh what happens in 2.2? Tabani, it's not important that you hang the reference list. It is more academically wise practice to do, but you're not going to lose marks if you didn't do that. Nathan says, must there be heading in the essay or before each question? Both. You've got to say to me question 1.1, and then you start, and in that essay has to be headings. Okay, so Wesley says 2.2 is the analysis of your metaphor. So basically then in 2.1, you provided me with a metaphor. Let's say for argument's sake, you said the teacher is like a gardener and the children in the Okay, yes, load shedding's just kicked on my side, so that's why everything was it. Can you hear me now? Thumbs up. Can you guys hear me? Okay, cool. So
There you
load
go.
shedding just happened. Awesome, thank you. So to go back then to question 2.1. So you explain your metaphor and what all the bits and pieces are for 250 words or less. It cannot be more. Then for 2.2, you now have to analyze your metaphor based on the characteristics of idealism and realism. So that is where that table that you had to fill in for activity 2.2.1, your ICE task, is so important. So now you're going to say to me, based on the function of education, Do your metaphor fit in more in line with, or does yours fit in more with idealism or realism? If it is both of them, then you tell me both. Your reference list has to be in alphabetical order. I will not take off marks this time around, because I know a lot of you are nervous about this, but in future, I am supposed to take off 5% if it's not in alphabetical order. So if some of you are freaking out about that, the reference list is important, but to me, the actual in-text referencing, that's the big one I'm going to be looking at for now. So if you make mistakes in your reference list, I will comment for you and say this is not in the right order. Try to remember to do it this way or that way in future. Because remember, your assignment 2 is like less than a month now. And that is due. So I'm not to take off marks for anything like that. So get back to question 2.2 then, as that is where I now go and analyze my metaphor based on the concepts in idealism and realism. What concepts? As it was in the table where you shared with me what is the role of the teacher, what is the function of education, what are the main premises of that one. And the majority of us end up having a little bit of idealism and a little bit of realism. It would be very unusual if I've got one person that tells me they're 100% idealistic or 100% realistic. It just depends on how you do it. So Nathan says, the nature of question 2.1 does require, no, it cannot have any references because it's your story. Question 2.2 has to be littered with references because now you are tying it to idealism and realism. And where do you get the information on what is idealism and realism? You're getting it from another source. That is why you have to reference those. Robin says, hanging, do you mean indenting? Yes, that's what it's called. Hanging is just the formal word that we say for it. You'll see it in the video. Okay. Any other questions? We've got one more minute, and then I want to start with learning unit 3. Okay, Avril says, 2.2 is basically applying your knowledge and the principles of idealism to your own teaching metaphor. Exactly. So we have to reference in question 2.2 very much so, and quite a lot of references, because you're going to say to me, I see myself as this, which aligns with the role of a teacher in idealism. Now, you make that type of statement, says who? Which source tells you what idealism say a teacher has to be? So there'll be lots and lots of referencing in this. Tando, you had your hand up.
Yes, my question is just, are we submitting at 12 o'clock as in 11:59 or is it 9 o'clock?
2100 hours, so 9 o'clock at night. And
okay.
Trust me, the system closes to 29:01. It's closed. Then you can't submit. That is why I said in today's letter, really try to submit it by 20:30, by 8:30.
Thank you.
I would also, Jennifer's right, I would also not go on the hour because something might just happen that it is slow. The system might decide when it hits 21:00, the minute it's 9 o'clock, it could cut it off there as well. It depends on who set the system. Sometimes they can cut it at 2100 hours, or they can cut it 1 minute past. Okay. Thanks, Dylan, for letting me know. I will try to upload the videos as quickly as I can. It will be up tonight. Sudika has said that you cannot access the weekly letters. I've got no idea why not. I will have to ask IT to have a look to see what's going on. And during the course of tomorrow, I'll try to repost all those letters one by one and see if that might sort it out. Okay, students, so it is now officially 16 minutes past 6, and I want to start off with today's actual Collab session. No, you will not receive any mail in your mailbox. Those mails get posted on actual Google Classroom. Not Google Classroom, in what's this thing that we use? VC Learn. It gets posted there. So this is today's session. We're going to look at, yes, Jennifer's correct. The Lesters are on VC Learn. I do not email them to you. So today we're going to look at Learning Unit 3. Okay, and we're specifically going to focus on just theme 1 and 2. So we're going to focus on empiricism and pragmatism is in the next one. So just so that you guys understand what's going on there. So on the screen at the moment, you can say, as I've said there, please do not post emails for me on VC Learn. I do not get a notification that there's an email. And if I'm not actually on the system constantly, I don't know that you have sent me an email. So it is much safer for you to either send an email to me at yorandafulyun@gmail.com or jfulyun@iie.ac.za on my phone, and then at least I know you've got a query and I can try to help you as quickly as what I can. So everybody should be able to get hold of me via email. WhatsApp is by far the fastest way. It's not the official way, but when there's queries, it's a lot easier for me to answer you on WhatsApp. I can make little videos and share things like that, which is not that easy to do via email. Okay, so we're basically looking at in assignment or in Learning Unit 3, there are 5 themes. Today, we're only going to look at empiricism versus rationalism, as well as pragmatism. I'm not going to touch the others. The videos that would be relevant to this week's work has already been posted for you on YouTube. So you should have those links. You'll find them on the VC Learn More Resources side. Okay, so the theme 1 deals with what is empiricism, what is rationalism, and obviously how do the two compare. So if we can start off then, what is empiricism? You will find this on page 33 in your textbook. So this deals with all our knowledge. They say all our knowledge comes through the use of our 5 senses. Okay? It is a belief in the basic empirical belief. Sorry, I I repeat myself here. And it is only direct results. We only know reality and what is around us based on what our senses perceive. So an example of this would be that typical story with that we do in philosophy. If a tree falls in a forest and there's no one to hear the tree fall, did the tree really fall? So that is a typical thing that empiricists will question. I wasn't there to see it, so I don't know. I've got to take your word for it, but I don't personally know it. In society, this actually works quite often. The minute someone, I could say for argument's sake to Tandu, I see that you did this, this, and this, and this. And Tandu is going to react very different from me saying, I saw this versus I've heard that you did this, because he's going to say to me, well, who did you hear it from? Are you sure that your sources are right? But when I tell you I see something, it means it's first-hand experience, so we tend to add more value to it. So what is empiricism with regards to the modern science? It is the truth of something that is confirmed or disproved of purely by experience. An example I can think of last year in May, June, there around, we had the looting that took place in KZN. The people that my students were writing exams on the day that all the hoo-ha happened, and I asked National, can we please consider changing the date or allowing our students to have a resubmission. The rest of the country did not really experience looting. They did not know what it was like to have gunshots and violence and all of that type of stuff. So their experience was different from ours. So from an empiricism perspective, to them, there was no looting. From my perspective, empiricism, I was there. I experienced it. I can state that that is what happens. So empiricism encouraged critical thinking, which in a way in schooling it works like, don't just believe something because I told you it's like that. Find out for yourself. See if you actually agree with what I say. So it also deals with, how do I know if something is true? Well, someone told me. Well, can I trust that someone? And this just makes me think straight away of when students give me Wikipedia as a resource that they are referencing. How can you reference Wikipedia? It's been changed by other people. It's not an academic piece of writing. Nina says, so the theory of the Big Bang would be disproved because no, exactly, we weren't there. So how do we know that that's what happened? So, and the next one that we're going to deal with is rationalism. It's kind of like the opposite to this one. So here we only statements that can be verified are those that can be checked through concrete experience. So that's what the empiricists state. So to them, what's the role of the teacher? The teacher would focus on telling children about the world we live in. I don't tell my children about, let's say I was a grade 6 teacher. Part of the solar system is what happens. They need to know all your planets and Earth and the sun and the moon and all of that. But the biggest part of that section deals with Earth, because that's the world that they live in. I cannot really theorize about what life is like on Mars with grade 6s. In high school, it's a little bit different, but in a primary school setting, I teach them about the world. The focus is on science subjects because that's what we can actually see and realize it's there. The focus is not on on art or literature. So this one aligns a little bit more with realism than what it does with idealism. So the question then comes about, what do we regard as a fact? Because we can only accept facts that we've seen. So according to the empiricists, they say we use our senses and experience to establish facts and to facts. Our senses tell us what's going on. Okay, so we get two types of facts. You don't need to know them as such. It's just for those of you that's more interested in it. We are facts that are true by definition. For example, 1 + 1 = 2. A circle is not a square. A bachelor cannot be married. So by the definition of what it is, we then know that it is true. Facts that can be proven to be true. For example, water consists of hydrogen and oxygen. So just to give you an example of where we question these things. So take note, it says here, let me grab the little hand so you can see it. Facts that are true by definition. So I'm going to make use of Chris as an example, because I know he won't mind. So if I say Chris is a boy, okay, so his name appears to be male, therefore Chris is male. What we're now experiencing in the world is where people do not identify with the gender that they are with. Okay, Chris is a man, but maybe I'm wrong and Chris actually does not want to identify as a man. This is becoming a big thing in education at the moment, people. I don't know if you read a lot what's going on in education, but this whole gender neutrality is going to be big. It's going to, within the next 3 to 5 years, the way things are happening in South African schools are going to change drastically. So that is an example of what we can relate to a fact by definition could actually change not to be what it is. yes, I also feel that it's good that we are getting there slowly, but we're getting there. So what is a definition then? A definition is a united understanding of what a word means. So a definition is important so that we know what it is. An apple plus an apple is 2 apples. I can't say an apple plus a pear is equal to fruit salad, because that doesn't really quite make sense. So we need to get all of those things together. So Wesley says our school has preferred names we have to use in brackets like John Smith, Johnny. Yes, true. It already starts in some countries. Yes, definitely. This is a big thing that is happening in the future. So why do we need to know definitions? Because we think we all agree on the meaning of certain terms, but we don't all necessarily understand it. And when it comes to education, if I talk about a holistic approach, do we all understand holistic to mean the same thing? And that's the reason why we give definitions. So those of you that have done your that written a thesis for other honors, masters, or PhD, we've got something where we call your key concepts, and that normally comes around your literature review. You've got to deal with that. Now, the purpose of that, the key concepts, is so that when I make use of a word, the reader understands what I mean with it. So let's take something that typically happens in education, such as parent involvement. Your understanding of parent involvement doesn't matter, neither does mine. But when you read my work in which I refer to parent involvement, you need to know, am I talking about homework involvement? Am I doing about raising the child? Am I talking about parents being present on the sidelines in sports events? What do I mean when I say parent involvement? And that's what the empiricists really hammer on, saying we need to be very clear what's going on there. So outcomes-based education is insistent on the evidence that a child has mastered a specific subject. So if you go look up a history of South African education, we no longer call it OBE, but we still practice OBE. If you go look at your, if I can just quickly take you back, for those of you that might be epileptic, don't look at your screen now, the flashing might put you off. If I go and I tell you this is what is in theme 1, I always give you your outcomes so that you know exactly what the focus is on, because we are still teaching outcomes-based education. So we're looking at whether you have mastered the objects that I have put out, the objectives, sorry. So the modern curriculum is a result of empiricism. We examinations is based on the need for evidence. So you guys have got an assignment due tomorrow. And once I mark that, I will now get the evidence that I need as in our case, a tutor, whether you as a group have mastered the concepts of idealism and realism. So that is what empiricists focus on. Do I actually have evidence? Teachers are judged on how well learners are performing. Maths and science teachers are regarded as more valuable. In today's life, that is very much still the case. So what are some of the dangers that we can associate with empiricism? Well, they encourage the focus and what can be measured and tested. And there are some things that we can't really measure and test. Integrity, loyalty, things like that. So the teachers will place emphasis on the IQ test, with other words, academic success. We focus on exams, and we are judged according to how well we have done in an exam, or how well our students have done. So the suggestion is there that the human emotion, or our range of human emotions, are not important. And that is kind of like really sad if we think of it like that. So just totally off the topic, I love the work of Professor Brené Brown. And in her book called The Atlas of the Heart, she talks about all the different emotions we experience. And the average human identifies three emotions: happy, sad, and mad. That's it. Those are the three emotions that we easily identify when there's a lot more than that, because we are so focused on putting things down on paper. We take what the heart is feeling, how we are feeling out of it. So teachers tend to ignore the values and the culture because they cannot be defined, or we cannot measure it so much. So a subject such as art would not actually be part of this. Yes, Alex, I totally agree. And she is totally. If any of you can find time to read any of her books, if you like me and you travel I travel daily and I get stuck in traffic in Cape Town. So I listen to audiobooks and I listen to her books, and it is amazing. When I get to work, I feel so inspired to be better. So definitely worth looking at. So if we go look at emphasis, then the advantages and the disadvantages. I'm not going to read through this with you. The slides are there for yourself. It's going to take a little bit too long for me to go through that. But there you can see where to get that. And please don't forget, you guys are actually able to download the slides I am currently using. So the next, we finished with empiricism. Now we're going to look at rationalism, also known as scientific rationalism. And what exactly is that all about? They say that we should question what we are told. Very similar to empiricism. Don't believe it because I say so. Go and find out for yourself. Yes, correct. Brene Brown has got something called Call to Courage. It's on Netflix. You can go watch that. So rationalists deal with the sense coupled with reason and logic. So yes, we do understand the work through what we are sensing, but we must also use common sense. The fact that I wasn't in the forest when the tree fell doesn't mean it didn't fall. So we need to be able to identify certain falsehoods. We should be prepared to constantly revise our knowledge. We need to be open to being wrong. So if we just think back of children, what stories did your parents tell you when you were little that you, now that you're an adult, know that was absolute nonsense? So an example, one of my kids said to me now that my kids, you guys are my kids, although some of you are probably in your 30s, it doesn't matter, you're still my kids. So one of my kids said to me now the other day, the story where if you eat an apple and you eat the pip, you're going to have a tree growing out your ears. Carrots are good for eyesight, the tooth theory, all of those things, okay? Now we can identify Father Christmas. Yeah, that's a sad one. I would like some fat old man to bring me presents. So we have got all of these falsehoods, and scientific rationalism says use reason and logic and make from that sense of what is actually going on. So they focus on fallibilism, whether a statement is false or true. So if I say to you today, let's take the boo-boo I made today. Your due date for your assignment is 3 April. Luckily, someone on the group could identify it and say, but that's false. According to the PAS document, it's the 4th of April. So you could determine that it was a false statement. Yes, Robin, that one. The flap of a butterfly's wings can cause an earthquake somewhere else in the world. That's another one. So what is the scientific rationalists' aim in education? They want us to have a questioning attitude. Don't just accept it at face value, question things. So they tend to be open-minded. We've got to be democratic. We all agree together on something, not one person makes the choice and everybody else has to abide by that. So here is something for you to think about, okay? So it's not part of your actual course, the stuff in the blue and the yellow. That's just to make you question something. So first of all, rational education says the impact on education is the emphasis of the secularism. With other words, we move away from religion and we focus more on the effects of culture has on it. Okay, so in yellow, it says much influenced in formal education systems due to the questioning approach. So a statement can be made that says modern schooling is prescriptive and conformist. It discourages critical discussion and debate. It is authoritarian. Now you've got to stop and ask yourself, do you agree with this? So depending on what school system you work in, it can be. It depends on what subject you teach. It can also be. I mean, if I'm going to teach you chemistry for argument's sake, and we do a chemistry equation, it is what it is. A kid mustn't come and argue with me, but they think water shouldn't be H2O, it should be HO2. No, you cannot argue with me. It is prescriptive. That's the way it is. Facts, end of the stories. But another subject, such as literature, for argument's sake, or even history, where I can say, was a specific act that took place really incorrect? Did it really, have we tried to look at it from a different point of view? And when we start doing that, we are now moving more into rationalism. So as much as we would like to think of rationalism being the go-to thing, it's not. We are more empiricism that way than the other way. So again, on the screen, there are advantages and disadvantages. I'm not going to go through them with you. You can read them yourself. They're not difficult to understand. So the next couple of slides, you will be able to see a comparison between rationalism and empiricism. Again, I'm not going to read these. I just shared them with you because I just like when it is a comparison, it makes it easy for you to understand. And you can then see for yourself how these two schools of thought work very differently. So comparison is continued. Oh, this thing has really split up my word comparison continued here. Yes, they are very much extensions of, well, they're not really extensions. So Plato and them were part of it. And then as the schools of thought grew, they started calling it something else. They can no longer stick to idealism because they realized they, as philosophers, differed from other philosophers of the same one. That's a beautiful way to do it. It's evolution. That's exactly what it is. It's the changing. The idealism and realism was there, and then these ones developed further from that. So the next one we're going to deal with, because we've only got like 20 minutes left, is pragmatism. Now, pragmatism is really important for assignment 2. You need to understand this one well, and you need to go look at slides on this. If you struggle with it, YouTube has got stacks and stacks of explanations on the same topic. So under pragmatism, our big philosopher is John Dewey. So you might wonder, where did you hear the word John Dewey beforehand? Our libraries make use of the Dewey system, in which we categorize books according to certain categories. So he was, yes, the Dewey classification. He was a naturalistic philosopher. He wanted to have explanations that explains natural phenomena, the way we see the world around us. He rejected supernatural sources. To him, well, the explanation comes now. He was experiential and interactive. That was what his learning was about. We need to experiment to see for ourselves. So for argument's sake, children mustn't take my word that rain is wet. Play outside. Discover for yourself that it's wet. An easy example would be teaching children not to touch a hot plate. Okay, they're not going to believe you because you say so. So the best is when the plate has cooled down enough that it's not going to burn blisters, let them touch the plate. Let them feel it's hot. Then they know, okay, wait, when mom says the plate is hot, now I know what's hot and why I shouldn't touch. So that's what they kind of say. So he believed in a method of science, also, again, believed in the dialectical method, with other words, we are asking questions. So what do you think? Very much the Socratic method. He rejected supernatural things. He says the story of God creating stuff or the Holy Spirit, he did not believe in any of those. So you can imagine he received quite a lot of backlash when he came up with these ideas. So what are the underpinnings of pragmatism? The big thing is that nothing is permanent. Okay, the only thing that's permanent is the fact that everything changes. So it is experiential in interactive learning. With other words, we've got to let the children actually experiment, experience things, be interactive with their learning, not just take it based on what I say. It seeks explanations of natural phenomena. So we want to understand why things are the way we perceive it with our senses. Things change because the experiences you've had. So in the classroom now, the other day, the example I could use was, if you think back of what you were like when you were 16 years old and what you regarded then to be the perfect role model. So in the class that I was at the day, that there were mostly just girls in that class. So I could use it, and I said to them, what was your ideal man at 16? And they sort of like all giggled, said, no, he had to be hot, and that was it. They don't really care about the other things. Now that they're in their early 20s, they look back at it and they say, it's cool if he's hot, but that's not a prerequisite. It's whether he's kind, whether he takes care of them, whether he's considerate. So that tells us how things have changed. So truth is relative because we believe that the world is changing, evolving as things go. So in the last couple of years, we've experienced COVID. We cannot go back to the way we taught before COVID. The teachers are trying, they want to revert back to the old way. We can't. The minute my students at campus where I teach, there's a hiccup, like, ma'am, can't we do this online? And I'm like, no, we're no longer doing online teaching. They want to go back to it because of the ease thereof. So pragmatism's big plus is that it believed in growth. We should not stagnate, we have to grow. So if we go look then at metaphysics and epistemology as they relate to pragmatism, you can see in the top there the yellow that says this lines up with realism, but there are fundamental differences, just so that you understand how that works. So when it comes to the metaphysics, they say that there's evolution, there's change that takes place. Meaning is derived from the experience that we have within our environment. Truth is relative. It depends on the situation. Not wanting to go into politics, I'm thinking, what is a safe topic for me to use? Sure. I'm thinking the Russian-Ukraine war, but to me, I can't see the other side. But I assume Russia does have another side. So I'm not going to go there. It's just going to be too difficult. Guys, so truth could be relative. It depends on which situation or experience you are. Pluto. Is Pluto a planet or not? Okay, so some people might say yes. Oh, I think you might. Are you saying Pluto or meaning Putin? I'm thinking I mentioned Russia, so I'm not sure. Oh, the poor planet. Okay. So there's all these things. So the truth is relative to how we view things. And that is what pragmatism is saying. And the epistemological aspect, with other words, how do we know what we know? They say, pragmatists say that knowledge comes through making practical experiences. It is subjective. Through making things, through practical experiences, it is subjective and it depends on the consequences. There is no such thing as absolute truth. So that is kind of like what we go on. Jennifer was thinking of Pluto the dog. Okay, well, see, who is it that came up with that? Wesley threw a spanner in our works. He said a word, and can you now see why a definition, why empiricists say It's important that we have a definition. That's a classic example. I'm thinking he might be meaning Putin. He's actually meaning the planets. Some of you thought he's actually talking about the cartoon. And all of us are right. It is possible that it could have been like that. So yes, it's definitely related to constructivism. All of these things relate to constructivism. Because remember, in today, teaching is based on constructivism. But constructivism is built on all of these things, such as pragmatism, amongst many others. So what in pragmatism, what is the meaning and the aims of education? So they say education is synonymous with growth. You have to have growth. So education, the purpose or the aim of education is more education. You're never going to stop learning. So I don't know if you guys have started it already, but you will do a subject called PRET, P-R-E-T. I think you're doing it. Some of you might be doing it already. Some of you might do it next semester. And in PRET, you deal with the 7 functions of teachers. And one of that is a lifelong learner. So it definitely falls under pragmatism. So what are the goals of education? It is growth, as we've said. It is helping learners to succeed through guiding and facilitating. I don't tell you where the answers are, but I tell you how to find them. Education is part of life. It fosters the habit of thoughts. Learners should be encouraged to take risks, to invent, to use initiative, and so forth. Schools meet the needs of society and the students, and it is very much self-directed learning. The role of the student is they are in charge of their own education. I'm not going to read through the rest. I'm running out of time. So again, what are the roles of the teachers according to pragmatism? We are facilitators. We are not authoritarian. We are not the dispensers of knowledge. So you can read through the rest. Teachers need to encourage. We need to offer suggestions for children on how to find things. We don't tell them where it is, but we help them to discover things for themselves. So the function of education is to prepare children for life. So all in all, really a positive way to look at teaching. What do they feel is the most logical methods of instruction? Problem solving, experiential learning, let the children experiment, inquiry methods, field trips, projects, that type of stuff. Rote memorization is replaced with individualized studies. It is action-oriented. So we're basically getting children to experience the syllabus instead of me just talking them through it. Very much realism. Yes, that's why they said it does differ here and there, but it is very much in line with realism. So how does our curriculum look? It is a learner-centered approach. It's composed of experience and content. Disciplines integrated, so content-based instruction, where I can teach something via other subjects. If I'm busy teaching my students in English home language, a poem on Ozymandias, for argument's sake, I can relate it then to history. Who was Ozymandias? What exactly did he have? He was a pharaoh in Egypt. What exactly did he all do? So I let there be an integration of the different disciplines that the children do. And kids, especially high school students, they love that because they tend to be quite shocked when we, as whatever teacher you are, actually know what's cooking in the other subjects. So definitely worth doing. So it's project-based. The child's interest is considered. So we try to give various ways of interest and teaching that we do. It just all depends on how we go about teaching. So if we then look at Dewey's theory of knowledge, he's got 2 central points that he focuses on. The first one is we need to use material from prior experience to guide inquiry. And lastly, genuine problem solving takes place when there's consequences to your hypothesis. So for those of you that look at this and say, what on earth does that mean? So basically, when we teach anybody anything, even when you're studying something for yourself, you attach any new knowledge to existing knowledge. And that is why a module such as this one, philosophy, is difficult for people that, for argument's sake, did a BCom. They did not really do philosophers and extensive creative writing and things like that. So they can't really tie the knowledge to existing knowledge. And Dewey says, unless you do that, children are going to really struggle with this. So I lecture research to fourth years. And now they learn what is quantitative and qualitative research, and they now need to know what's interpretivism and positivism. And all of these weird words, such as epistemology and metaphysical position, is really very difficult for them because they cannot tie it to prior knowledge. And Dewey says it's very important that we learn how to do this. Teachers that use the Dewey system, we are more concerned with growth by allowing our students to test and try out their own procedures. And when they make a mistake, they can correct their own mistakes. We don't correct it for them. They figure out from themselves it didn't work quite well, so let's try again. An example would be if I'm in an art class and I tell my students, if you take blue and you take yellow and you mix them, you're going to get green paint. So now a student says to me, well, what's going to happen if I take blue and I mix it with green? So instead of me telling the child, I say, well, mix it and let's see what happens. That would be where there's a consequence to the action, and they can then see, oh my word, it ends up being a haha murky color story. I don't like this paint. Oh no, I love this shade. This is perfect. So with that, we are more concerned about the growth in any others. So the opponents to this philosophy is allowing students to use faulty rules may lead them to practice their errors. So although these theories seem to be lovely, we have to realize, especially since you guys are training to become high school teachers, when you get to grade 11 and 12, you teach according to matric final exam. You now no longer care about whether the child is growing and whether they're enjoying the poem. I've got 30 poems to get through. Sit down, take out your book, start writing. Unfortunately, that is the reality of the matter. But at times, we can practice some of this growth aspects. And I think that's why it's important for you to learn the philosophy. So what is his theory of knowledge? Knowledge is bigger than truth. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. The way you discover whether it's true or not, that is what's important. So knowledge is basically a body of information and skills that we apply. All propositions and skills that guide deserve the label of knowledge. Whether it was a good experience or a bad experience, we will learn from it. So another big part of this that comes in is democracy of education. I'm sorry that the words on the left is broken up like that. So Robin says, I admit that I struggle to picture any majorly creative application to accounting. Exactly. The way that I have seen accounting being creative is I gave them a book to balance when they know zilch about balancing books, and then they make mistakes. A creative lesson that I attended last year is a student teacher actually created the CJ and whatever's a J, the books, and there were errors, and the learners had to identify what the errors were. So that was a creative way to go about doing accounting, but in general it would not be that easy. So these people are very much pragmatists. There we go, CPJ and CRJ. There we go. So these people are very for democracy in education. We are teaching a child should be encouraged to communicate, to inquire, construct common values and knowledge. So you as a teacher should not take exception when a child questions you and say, but how do you know that it's true? are you sure that it's got to go there? It can't maybe fit in another category. We should be open to that. So again, in some schools that would go down like a ton of bricks. Other schools it would be encouraged. It depends on your point of view. So democracy in education, it is a model that we have by kind of like what we live. Rules were to be tried and tested. They must be under constant scrutiny, revision, and creation. So I always say to my student teachers, if you're going to create classroom rules, you have to involve your learners in those rules. They must come up with some of these rules. Otherwise, they're just going to ignore what it is that you say. So the rest, I think, is quite self-explanatory. I'm not going to go into detail about that. So where do we place subject matter? Teach subjects in a way that make them genuine subject matter. So if you're going to teach business studies, allow the children to do business studies. If someone can one or other time remind me on WhatsApp, not tonight, like maybe on Thursday, I will do not a video, I'll do a voice recording in which I tell you a very amazing way in which we can teach business studies, makes it relevant to children and that they will never forget. But I haven't got enough time now. So we need to present work through problems. So how do I find solutions? How do I figure out what's going on? I'm thinking now children wrote an essay and they need to identify what were the mistakes. Instead of them handing in an essay with mistakes, swap with a friend. See if your friend can identify what the mistakes are. They learn through that process. So you can read through it all, but the big deal is for them as children need to learn through doing. They must experience the subject material. They must not just take it for whatever I, as the teacher, stated it. So if we can look, here's a beautiful summary of it, where they tell you exactly, this is for pragmatists, just by the way, this tells you what's the goal of education, the nature, the role of the teacher, the role of the students, the teaching method, and the subjects that normally gets taught. So you can get a better idea of how this one works. So who agrees with what is the arguments of agreement for Dewey today? Students are active pursuers of their own purposes. So it's actually quite nice that they can go in a direction that they want to. The students participate in democratic forms of education. The people that disagree about this say it's too ambitious. You can't do a democratic decision on everything in class. You're never going to make decisions if we do it that way. So they very much say that some of it, it's okay. If you need to go, it's fine. So it depends on where you stand on it. So as with anything in life, there will be positives and negatives. So our next session that we're going to have a collab is going to be on the 17th of April. And then we will look at the key points in themes, also learning unit 3, but themes 3 to 5. And I will then also start touching on assignment 2. And that brings us to the end, just in time. So Robin says, I'm reading Robin's story because when you do, when you guys watch the video on YouTube, you don't see the comments. So Robin says, I was discussing the philosophy of education with a friend who teaches at a local private school. Funny, she's a musician and adamant that today's kids need to learn to focus and be bored and respectful like every generation before them. I was actually keen to learn perspective from someone who's been doing it for years. I hear what you say, but there's also an amazing video that says if we are still teaching children the way we were taught at school, there's been no progress, and that's a bad thing. So we can use some of the elements of the old ways, but we cannot just teach the old ways. Some of your lessons will be teacher-centered, and now you've got to sit down and focus on what I'm telling you, but you can't teach like that all the time because you are not going to find the interest of your students. Someone is busy drawing. Please don't do that. So any other comments? Yeah, no, I hear what you say, but I also find it interesting to speak. Those of you that need to leave, you're welcome to leave because the session is over now. I also find it interesting to listen to people, but sometimes their arguments don't make sense. And this is why this module is actually worth doing, because it's helping you to see how people think from a different point of view. Okay, everyone, have a good evening. I will share the video hopefully by this evening. Chris says, I look back at my first books and cringe. If you don't criticize your work from 3 years ago, then you haven't developed. Exactly. If we are still doing things the same way we did 3 years ago, then we have not grown, and that's tragic. Bye, everyone. I've still got 57 students. You guys need to log off now. Nina is perfect. Exactly. The way we consume information changes. I can read a book now, and when I read the same book that I read 3 years ago, I see things in it that I didn't notice beforehand. Plagiarism is normally 25 to 30%, but don't worry about it. I open your report to see what on earth actually happened. Okay, I'm going to stop recording.